tremendous tension in this part of the area. Now, this is Palestinian territory, and the Israeli forces have moved in a big way in the past 24 hours. At least 70 suspected Hamas fighters have been taken into custody in the West Bank. It's ever since the 7th of October, the number of arrests in the West Bank, in the Palestinian territory, has crossed over 700. Even as we speak, there are protesters who've assembled after the Friday prayers. Look around me. Ambulances are already in place. These are ambulances that are coming in place. Youngsters with Palestinian flags all around are in this area. Emergency workers already in place, because there already has been some incidents have taken place. The Palestinian youth here are protesting against the Israeli forces and their actions at the Gaza Strip. And over the course of the next half hour, I will get you all details of the rising anger in the Palestinian West Bank. In fact, the apprehension is this could well be the second front that Israel has to deal with after the Gaza Strip.
Israel-Hamas war gets bigger. Theatre of war expands. Now, Lebanon and Palestine borders on fire. India Today covers all war fronts.
Trouble which is expected in this part.
The most exhaustive coverage with Gaurav Sawant in the war zone.
Today is reporting from ground zero. This is Palestinian West Bank. There are several enclaves and settlements here where you have the Israeli population also. In fact, of the 300,000 people who live here, 86% are Palestinians, about 14% are Israeli settlers who have very well protected enclaves in this area. It's almost like a military cantonment, and anyone who attempts to come close to the fortification, there's firing, tear gas shells are fired, and protesters here also come with gas masks. Where we are right now, this is the central square, at the central roundabout at Ramallah. This is the Ramallah Bira area, and this is where the protesters are slowly gathering. I want to show you these images of youngsters waving the Palestinian flag. They've assembled here. Ambulances are already out. There are separate enclaves where the Palestinians can go, areas where only Israelis stay, and of course there are then those areas where both Palestinians and Israelis can go. But then there is a lot of security in place. But right now, tension palpably high. I want to show you a report. Just when we reached the Palestinian West Bank, there wasn't a soul in sight. But the situation is fast deteriorating. It's taking a turn for the worse as Israeli forces move in a bigger way to ensure that all Hamas sleeper cells and fighters are immediately taken into custody. Okay, more ambulances are now coming in, because as the protesters come close, Israeli forces target those protesters, and ambulances are then rushed in to take those protesters to the nearest hospital. We bring you this ground report.
India Today is reporting from ground zero at the West Bank, and it's Friday. After the Friday prayers, there is some trouble which is expected in this part of the territory. In fact, the Israeli Defense Forces, they've been very aggressive. The Israeli Defense Forces have arrested more than 70 suspected Hamas fighters in this area. And this has happened just in the past 24 hours. The Israeli forces swooped in, made those arrests, and took those suspects away. But apart from that, the expectation is hours from now, as people assemble for Friday afternoon prayers at the mosque here. This is where India Today will be reporting from. There will be clashes with the Israeli forces. The apprehension is after Gaza Strip, this could be the second front where the Israeli forces could be engaging with the rising anger amongst the Palestinian youth. India Today is the first channel to be reporting from so deep inside the West Bank. So we were at Ramallah, now we've come to Beira. This is where you have some Israeli settlements, and in these settlements are being targeted by the Palestinian youth, who say that the targeting, the airstrikes that have been carried out at more than 100 locations. The situation remains extremely tense, extremely grim. The images are being broadcast in every home live. But if you notice the road around me, every shop is shut, every house, there are people who are barricaded inside. Watch, there is an apprehension, there is this and there is this fear, there is this apprehension that the Israeli forces will come in a big way and start making those arrests, especially of the youth. But there are some who say that this is the time to defy the Israeli forces. This is the time for the youth to come out on the streets and stand with the people in Gaza. And you have to be very careful what you say, what you speak when you are here at the West Bank, because the situation, one, very volatile, two, very, very tense. Now, this is a place which is home to close to 30 lakh people, 86% Palestinians, 14% Israeli settlers. And there have been instances of violence, of targeted attacks that have been taking place. And that is why the Israeli forces are also deployed in larger numbers. We're getting to where this apprehension is that there could be violence. And again, in the West Bank, this could well be the second frontier. Israel is now fighting a war on multiple fronts against Hamas at Gaza Strip. Hamas investing extensively even here in West Bank. Several Hamas fighters have been taken into custody here at the West Bank, where I am right now, and also with the Hezbollah on the Lebanon border. So as far as Israeli forces are concerned, they could be facing trouble on multiple fronts, from Gaza to West Bank to the Lebanon border. This is a conflict which is Hamas versus Israeli forces, but Hamas has also been trying to make major inroads in the West Bank, in Ramallah, in Beira, where I am right now. And, we were advised by the Israeli forces not to stay at any one location for too long, because the apprehension is that while the Palestinians here in the West Bank want peace and development, and you're looking at, those benefits of peace and development in this part of the West Bank. Watch around me, big malls, big shops, well-to-do people. You have massive showrooms, you have KFC, all of that is here. Big automobile showrooms also here, but again, a very densely populated colony or locality here. This is where the Palestinian Authority also have their office. The Prime Minister's office wasn't far from where we were reporting from earlier today. But the Hamas is not restricted just to Gaza Strip now. Hamas has increasingly tried to make major inroads here, and 70 Hamas fighters were arrested in the past 24 hours. Close to 500 have been arrested since the 7th of October incident that had taken place. So right now, this is an extremely volatile zone. This is virtually this is a tinderbox. Even the West Bank is becoming a tinderbox, and Israeli forces are deployed in adequate numbers to ensure that this doesn't emerge as the second front. The apprehension is, after Gaza, West Bank could emerge as the second front. This is a very well-developed part of the West Bank where I am right now. This is an area which also has open areas. It has, so for example, right behind me, this is a mall where you see some shops of bridal wear, some offices. You also see the Palestinian flag flying high on top at this central roundabout, that petrol pump that you see right behind me. And there are signs of protest, but what you see on top of that hill beyond the fence, now there are some Israeli settlements here, and that's a boon of contention. Look, these are people who are going about their daily lives, their jobs. Watch, their big cars in this area. So whether you have the latest Volkswagen, we have come in here in one of the cars, because Israeli automobiles do not come in here, or they're at least advised not to. When we came to Jerusalem. From Jerusalem, we crossed the border, or that picket fence, if I may, and our Israeli driver didn't come this side. He said, no, it's not safe. He said, I will stay right here and wait for you. So I crossed over with some foreign journalists on the other side, and then we got into a car of a Palestinian taxi driver, a Palestinian taxi driver driving the latest Skoda, the latest model of Skoda. So this is a well-to-do place. There are big houses. There's, one of the offices we went to, we interacted with a local journalist, and it's a plush office, overlooks the mountain here. You can see parts of Jerusalem from some places. So this is quite different. But though it is thickly populated, population density immense. I mean, 30 lakh people live in a narrow land bank. And again, while 86% are Palestinian, 13% or 14% are Israeli settlers in this area. And there is now a spike in tension between the Israeli settlers and the Palestinians here at West Bank. There are various pockets of the Israelis inside the West Bank, and they are protected by the Palestinian forces. So let me show you more images of cars and people at this crossing. But right now, I'm also trying to head to the place where clashes are expected between the Israeli forces and the Palestinian youth, and very, very angry Palestinian youth here. Again, as I was coming in, the advice was do not stay at any one location for too long, because this is where word gets around here very quickly, and the Hamas fighters could also learn that there are foreign journalists here, and then they could come and target people in any one location. So we come to a location, we shoot there, and then we move to the next location to be able to get you a wider perspective of what's happening here.
And where I am now, protesters have started assembling. Watch around me. You have a number of protesters and children. The parents, they've all assembled here. There are youth who are standing all over this, all around here, waiting to protest. Some of these roads have now been barricaded. So you look at the protesters, they are here in numbers, health workers who are there, and this is the road that's been barricaded completely. And there on the other side, you have ambulances that are lined up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 ambulances already lined up here, because anytime now with protesters assembling here, they will try and march towards that Israeli settlement that you see behind me. That wall, behind that wall is the Israeli settlement, and this is where the protesters come in large numbers to protest. That is where the moment they come, as the Israelis put it, dangerously close to that fence, the Israeli security forces, they either fire tear gas shells or open fire with rubber bullets. The protesters here, of course, say that there are times that real bullets have also been used injuring people. In fact, it's not just that. The apprehension amongst the Israeli forces is that a very large number of Hamas fighters have infiltrated in this area, and this is where there is another pocket of resistance that is building up. Now, Israel wants to stop that, and that is why it's targeting some of these youth here. But not everybody in this part of Palestine wants to take on the Israeli forces. In fact, they are actually saying that they'd rather live in peace, they'd rather live in harmony and hope for a peaceful negotiated settlement. But Hamas, of course, is making deeper inroads, is the apprehension. But for Israel, the second front is already the Israel-Lebanon border. In fact, just about an hour ago, Israeli forces used airstrikes to target some of the Hezbollah strongholds. Israel says that Hezbollah fighters had targeted some of their posts, destroyed some of their communication equipment. Based on very specific intelligence, they mounted a swift counterattack. India Today's Ashraf Vani is on ground zero in Lebanon, and he's filed this report.
We are in a deflated position, we are in a safe position a little bit, but just 50 meters away from us, between these two sides, continuous exchange of fire there. We are able to watch it because of the height we have. Look, again, machine gun fire. This was machine gun fire, like continuous machine gun fire. You can see tracers going. Continuous fire, continuous machine gun and arty fire. Look, from both sides, both sides.
The exchange of fire on the Lebanon border is getting more regular, a sign that Israel could have to contend with a two-front war if it goes ahead with its ground invasion of Gaza. Many Hezbollah locations in South Lebanon have already been damaged in Israel's mortar shelling. Hezbollah too is striking back at Israeli army's positions from South Lebanon.
This tension is not only restricted to the land, but the Hezbollah fighters on Thursday fired a missile on the naval base in the Mediterranean Sea at Nakura, which is also behind me, visible in the visuals. There was not any report of damage in that naval base of Israel in the Mediterranean Sea.
While Hamas continues to remain a major threat, the Israeli Defense Force has warned the Lebanon-based Hezbollah group to stay away from the ongoing war.
So right now we're still striking Hamas infrastructure and senior leadership in Gaza. We are very, very determined. We're acting based on intelligence and slowly going after Hamas targets. And we're going to go to get to each and every one of them. We've asked civilians to move south from Gaza City, south of Wadi Gaza. We've declared a safe zone in the Moassi on the beach. And we are moving on our operational planning.
In some parts of Lebanon, civilians have already been evacuated in anticipation of hostilities.
This town with the red rooftops, this is Metula, and if you see the tower behind this, single big tower, high tower, that is Lebanon. And you can see the signboard saying Metula that side. So the Metula is there, and just 50 meters from there, the Lebanese territory starts, and that big tower or building you see, white building, is in Lebanon.
The US Embassy in Lebanon has already urged its citizens to make plans to depart as soon as possible. Clashes at the Israel-Lebanon border have now raised fears of a wider war. With Gaurav Sawant, Rajesh Pawar and Ashrafani, Bureau Report, India Today.
So that was India Today's Rajesh Pawar reporting from the Israeli side of the Lebanon border. We also have Ashrafani reporting from Ground Zero in Lebanon. In fact, India Today has the biggest team of reporters on Ground Zero to get you a 360-degree perspective on this story. I am currently at the West Bank, Palestinian territory, where there is rising anger over Israel's targeting of Hamas strongholds at the Gaza Strip. Not everybody here supports Hamas. At the same time, they're saying that too many civilians are being killed in this crossfire between Hamas and the Israeli forces. But what is this fight all about? According to Israel, it started with 1,400 of their civilians being massacred by Hamas on the 7th of October. But this is a fight that the Palestinians say has been on for longer as they assemble here to protest Israel's targeting of civilians at the Gaza Strip. I want to cut across to India Today's Akshita Nandagopal, who gives us a brief history of the problem that is being faced here by people on Ground Zero.
The name Palestine comes from the word Philistines, which was in use many years ago, from 12th century BCE, which is when the Greeks actually owned a portion of land in what is now known as Palestine. Now, 1,000 years later, the Romans also used it when they in fact stretched their empire into what is now known as modern-day Syria. So for almost 2,000 years, the word Palestine wasn't used, and this despite the fact that it was very much in Arabic since the advent of Islam. In 1918, when the Ottoman Empire collapsed after the First World War and Britain had the mandate over the land, they brought Palestine back into use as separate from the adjoining territory of Jordan. By this time, there was already a sense of conflict brewing between the Arabs and the Jews. And that's courtesy an idea that was proposed by Napoleon over a century ago, that he'd give a certain portion of land as a safe house, as a territory for Jews. And that's where the seeds of this conflict essentially began. The British then tried to use it to their advantage to get support against the Ottomans. And so they too promised a Jewish territory in the Arab land. Palestine had become a distinct political entity for the first time in centuries. But they also realized one thing, that in this conflict between Palestinian Arabs and Palestinian Jews, the decision would be based on obviously the number with regards to the population and who owned more land. So that's why while the British were there, the region still saw this kind of a conflict playing out. The Jewish immigration was constant into this area. But despite that, the numbers were clearly skewed in favor of the Palestinian Arabs. Then came another world war. And as Hitler occupied Europe, began systematically killing Jews, Palestine once again became the promised land where shiploads of Jewish refugees began arriving. By the end of the war, the race was on to secure a Jewish nation on the shores of the Mediterranean. By this time, there were Jewish militias that had formed and Arabs had started to arm in self-defense. In 1947, the United Nations stepped in. They came up with a partition plan for Palestine known as Resolution 181. It led to the conflict only escalating. There was a civil war that broke out in Palestine, and so for obvious reasons, the British didn't want to get their hands dirty. They wanted out. And despite the mess, the sovereign state of Israel came into being in May 1948. And immediately, Israel was at war with its Arab neighbors. A war that Israel won. So by this time, the areas, the territories of Palestine and Israel were very clearly marked out and distinct. Palestine was West Bank and Gaza. But this clearly remained a thorn for Israel. So another war broke out, this time in 1967, when Israel occupied Palestine, occupied West Bank and Gaza. In 1964, the Palestinian Liberation Organization, the PLO, had been formed in Cairo in Egypt. And under the leadership of Yasser Arafat, the PLO took up the challenge to wage constant war against the state of Israel. For the next 2.5 decades, the PLO continued to wage war against Israel. Finally, however, there was a breakthrough in 1987. That's when the PLO finally agreed and adopted the UN resolution, which meant they finally recognized the state of Israel. Matters improved and it seemed to be on the mend, but it was short-lived. By 2002, the region was again in terrible conflict. The second intifada or uprising had begun. In 2007, Israel imposed a blockade in Gaza. In 2008, Israel sent in its army into the Strip. A peace was brokered that lasted a mere 4 years. And Israel once again attacked Gaza in 2012 and once again in 2014 when bombs rained down on Gaza. A ceasefire was finally declared in August 2014. One that lasted till May 2021. And then for 11 days, there was no peace. Gunshots, arson and missiles turned this promised land into a war zone. What started with a conflict over the Al-Aqsa Mosque settled with a fragmented peace dotted with frequent firing and stone pelting. Till 7th October 2023, the day that war once again broke out in this region. The day that the cancer of Middle East once again turned this land into a boulevard of broken promises.
And I want to walk amongst the crowd for a moment. The situation here remains extremely tense. The youth have assembled here in large numbers as we walk around and show you the anger on the streets. There is anger on the streets at this point of time. We're just walking amongst the crowd to show you how there are youngsters and they've got just slingshots in their hand. With these slingshots, they're taking on the Israeli forces behind those barricades behind me. So youth have assembled here in large numbers. There are women. There are those who have the Palestinian flag. For example, this family, I want to show you these images with the Palestinian flag. These people are here. In fact, in some instances, you have people who have gas masks. They're wearing gas masks because the Israeli forces often use tear gas shells. And from top of buildings, various people from top of buildings also, they're looking at whatever is happening here. An attempt was made to set these petrol tankers on fire. But this is the line. Nobody's permitted to go beyond this line right now. But anger rises as ambulances come in large number and take those who've been injured in these attacks to hospital. Look behind me. So ambulances are now lining up all along this road as people are taken to hospital with slingshots. They're taking on the Israeli forces behind those high walls. The anger is at the targeting of civilians in Gaza. But what's happening at other borders? What has Israel's offensive in the Gaza Strip been like, especially when churches have also been targeted, which Hamas says has been done by Israeli forces? The Israeli forces, of course, say Hamas is also using information warfare in a very big way. No hospital was targeted by Israeli forces, but Hamas said that it was Israel that targeted the hospital, and people suddenly moving to a side. Let's get you more in this report.
Another night of bombing in Gaza. A historic church sheltering civilians is struck by a deadly blast. Many were killed, scores injured in yet another attack as Israeli forces gear up for ground assault. Hamas is blaming Israeli airstrikes, but Tel Aviv has vehemently denied any role in the attack on the church, one of the oldest in the world.
After the Greek Orthodox Church was targeted, the Palestinian authorities are blaming Israel for it. Israel, of course, says it does not target either hospitals or schools or sensitive locations. It has not targeted any of these locations, even at a time when Israel has accused Hamas of using places very close to either a hospital or schools, generally a no-go area for Israeli defense forces, to mount rocket and missile attacks on Israel and targeting Israeli civilians. So this war of words and information war is only set to intensify.
The survivors of the attack narrated the horror, how they believed they were safe in the church when they really weren't.
They came here to escape the airstrikes and the destruction. They thought they were safe here. The destruction followed them.
Rescuers dug through the rubble in hope that they would find survivors. Many are believed to be trapped under the debris. No fuel, no power, no proper water supply. Gazans endured yet another night of bombing amid uncertainty on whether Rafah crossing will open, allowing humanitarian aid to the people of Gaza before the imminent ground invasion. With Gaurav Sawant in Palestine, Bureau Report, India Today.
And now protesters are coming here in larger numbers as our ambulances take those who've been injured to hospital. The protesters, after Friday prayers, they assemble at this central roundabout in Ramallah, and protest against the Israeli forces. Now, there is also this blockade of the Gaza Strip. Israel's not permitting any resources, any food, water or emergency supplies, medicines to get to Gaza Strip from the Israeli crossing. They say that we have about 200 of our people who are being held hostage by the Hamas. They need to be released first. But US President Joe Biden succeeded in ensuring that there is one humanitarian corridor that's open from the Egyptian side. That's the southern side of the Gaza Strip from the Rafah border. And 6 trucks, of course it's a drop in the ocean, but 6 trucks carrying food, water and medicines have been permitted. Will that happen in the next several hours or days remains to be seen, but a lot more needs to be done. There is also this hope that the Americans have from information that we've been able to pick up, that at least some American citizens and British citizens would be permitted to leave through the Egyptian borders and then join some of the warships that are there and be taken to safety. I get you more in this report from the West Bank.
Truckloads of stockpiled aid are waiting to be transported into Gaza from Egypt through the Rafah crossing. Security forces say that machinery to repair roads has already been sent through in preparation, as more than 100 trucks await. Rafah, the only crossing not controlled by Israel, has been out of operation since the first days of the conflict. But the United States and Egypt have been pushing for a deal with Israel. On Wednesday, the White House said it had been agreed for up to 20 trucks to pass through, with hopes for more later, so long as those supplies do not reach Hamas. Most of Gaza's 2.3 million residents depend on aid. According to the United Nations, before the conflict started on October 7th, about 100 trucks daily were providing humanitarian relief to the enclave. But the upcoming arrival of aid is unlikely to raise spirits. Airstrikes and acute shortages of food, medicine and water are worsening the humanitarian situation in the Strip. In the city of Khan Yunis, the wounded, which includes UN workers and children alike, are being brought into hospital. These people have been injured as a result of airstrikes hitting a house on Thursday morning. Also in the city, those displaced from their homes have sought refuge in a wedding hall. This lady is among them and says the hall should be used for celebration, not as a place to mourn. Israel has said it will continue a blockade of humanitarian aid from Israel into Gaza until hostages held by Hamas are returned. Israel's bombardment and siege of Gaza is in retaliation for a devastating Hamas incursion into Israel on October 7th, during which 1,400 people were killed and hostages taken. Israel and Egypt have upheld a blockade of Gaza since Hamas took control of the territory in 2007, tightly controlling the movement of goods and people.
And in this conflict, the effort is children should not be the worst sufferers in this conflict. Behind me, 2 young children here at the protest site. They've been brought in by their parents. They're looking at what's inside this ambulance, and it's a very dangerous situation. The effort should be to insulate children from conflict, but is that happening on either side of the border? Whether it's on the Palestinian side or on the Israeli side, perhaps children are the worst sufferers in this conflict. All effort. This is an India Today campaign to save children from conflict.
The horrors of this war, the terrible price of this conflict, is always paid by the smallest. After the demonic Hamas terror attack, and Israel's unforgiving vengeance, it's the children of both sides who are paying. India today stands with the innocent. Join us as we say to the world, save the children.
The situation here remains extremely grim. The gentleman behind me wearing a mask, that is where the situation becomes extremely tense. They are the ones, in their masks, in their slingshots that are taking on the Israeli forces. But our question remains, how do you save children from conflict? I want to quickly get you a report. Little children who are here in this situation, in this conflict situation, watch this. They've been brought here by their parents, and just how safe is this? Let me speak to one of the paramedics who's here. Sir, what is happening here right now? Why is this situation so tense right now at Ramallah? Okay, and how do you save children from conflict in a situation like this? Okay. Sorry. No issues. So a little hesitation to speak in front of camera, off camera. There are a lot of comments that come from doctors, from others who are here. But watch behind me, youngsters with slingshots, with their slingshots taking on the forces on the other side. Watch, they've already started lighting up tires in this area as a mark of protest. This is what indicates that the situation anytime will take a turn for the worse on ground zero as crowds assemble in larger numbers. You have people wearing masks like this gentleman right behind me with their masks taking on the Israeli forces. There are women with Palestinian flag, men, women, in some instances little children who are here protesting. I get you more in this report on how do you insulate children from conflict.
The victims of this war, innocent children. Of the more than 2 million people living in Gaza, roughly half are under the age of 18. And they are paying the price for Hamas brutality in Israel. This heartbreaking video shows a child in shock, being treated by a doctor. He sobs uncontrollably as the doctor tries to hug and console him, showing us both the physical and mental impact this war has on little ones. The homes they hope to grow up in are now reduced to rubble. Their rooms, which hold their childhood secrets, has come crashing down like their dreams.
All of their homes are gone. My home fell over me. My daughter, who was the flower of the household, died. Look at these children. They have been injured like me. They took us out of the rubble. How are we at fault?
Gazan children who now live in tents are considered the lucky ones. With their homes destroyed, their cities flattened, they now live as refugees in the city they were born in.
We want safety. We are civilians, not soldiers. Children are out on the street. This is 1, 2, 3, 4 young children. They all ended up on the street with no water or food. It's a shame for them to be left out on the street. How are we at fault?
This is a makeshift camp in Gaza's Khan Yunis, set up near a UN Refugee Agency school. There are now so many families that people live cramped up in the ground, setting up tents, and little kids scooped up close to their parents.
They destroyed us, kicked us out of our homes with our young children. And look at how we are living on the sand and dirt. The children are sick. We can't find water to drink or food.
These children who live in makeshift homes have no idea what tomorrow brings for them. Life or death, hope or more despair. They now live life one day at a time. Their lives changed forever for the worse. Bureau Report, India Today.
India Today is reporting from ground zero at the West Bank, where a large number of Palestinian protesters have assembled. They are extremely unhappy over the targeting of the Gaza Strip, and these protesters say that this could well be the second front against Israel. First the Gaza Strip and now the West Bank. Anger rising. In fact, several of these protesters are now burning tiger. That those plumes of smoke that you see rising right behind me, tires are being burnt very close to where the Israeli settlement is. The situation here taking a turn for the worse. A large number of protesters with slingshots in their hands are targeting the Israeli settlement across. The Israeli army, on the other hand, has its rubber bullets. You have several ambulances that are lining up this entire area, and this goes on to indicate that the situation here remains extremely tense. Free Palestine is the demand of these protesters here, calling for action to be taken. Meanwhile, Hamas has made a major claim. Hamas claims that they've actually used a drone to target the Israeli forces. Hamas claims that they've actually targeted a Merkava tank of Israel using a drone, and drones are actually being seen as major disruptive weapons of war, whether it was the Azerbaijan-Armenia conflict where Azerbaijan extensively used drones against Armenia, or Hamas now getting access to drones to target the Israeli Merkava tank. I'll get you more in this report. Images that you see from ground zero in West Bank. India today is reporting from the Palestinian West Bank, where there is rising anger against Israel's actions at the Gaza Strip. There is an apprehension that the West Bank could become the second frontier that Israeli forces have to deal with. I see a lot of anger, I see a lot of protesters here, and let me try and speak to some of them. Madam, I'm from India. What brings you here in protest this Friday afternoon?
And I know I speak English.
Okay. Madam, do you speak English? I want to know what your protest is all about.
International unity. That is the only way national unity forces.
Okay, but these tires that are being burned, youth are using slingshots against the Israeli forces. Give me a moment. We will continue this conversation in a little while from now as these protests intensify. A number of flags also here, and I want to leave you with these images of tires being burned right next to that Israeli settlement right behind me on West Bank. India Today is reporting from ground zero in West Bank, Palestine. A quick break. News and updates continue on India Today. Stay with us.
You are watching India Today, powered by Finest, Be Sustainable Change, a B&P Group company.
As of now, I can confirm that India has formally conveyed its plan to unilaterally remove diplomatic immunities for all but 21 Canadian diplomats and dependents in Delhi by tomorrow, October 20th. This means 41 Canadian diplomats and their 42 dependents were in danger of having immunity stripped on an arbitrary date, and this would put their personal safety at risk. The safety of Canadians and of our diplomats is always my top concern. Given the implications of India's actions on the safety of our diplomats, we have facilitated their safe departure from India. This means that our diplomats and their families have now left.
You are watching India Today, powered by Finest, Be Sustainable Change, a BNP Group company.
Hiranandani has released a statement, a letter. Miss Moitra, he says, was getting help from Sucheta Dalal, a very famous financial journalist, Shardul Shroff and Pallavi Shroff. Sucheta Dalal has claimed that she doesn't know Mahua Moitra personally, has completely dismissed these charges as slander. Darshan Hiranandani said that they were feeding her all kinds of unverified information regarding Mr. Adani and his companies. So he says that Sucheta Dalal as well as Shardul Shroff and Pallavi Shroff were among those who were feeding Mahua Moitra with information on the Adani group of companies so that she could target them in Parliament later through her questions. There were others who were assisting her in targeted attacks. So he said that Mahua Moitra's original intention was to target Prime Minister Narendra Modi, but because of his impeccable record, she decided and she was advised to target Gautam Adani, who's said to be close to the government, also because both hail from the state of Gujarat. She had interactions with many Congress leaders, including Rahul Gandhi, on matters relating to Adani companies. It's well known that Rahul Gandhi has constantly raised the Adani issue at various fora. She had frequent interactions with journalists from the Financial Times, the New York Times, the BBC, and several Indian publications. So she was in conversation with various media groups in order to, of course, continue to attack Gautam Adani and the Adani group.
Well, amidst all this coverage of the Israel-Palestine conflict, it's easy to forget that India was in the middle of a big diplomatic crisis with Canada. It's been 1 month since Justin Trudeau triggered that entire fight. And the India-Canada diplomatic face-off has actually just escalated. Ottawa, that's the capital of Canada, has withdrawn 41 diplomats from its consulates and embassies across India, after India set October 10th as the deadline for trimming of that staff, if you remember, citing diplomatic parity, which is that each side needs to have an equal number of diplomats in the other country. Canada claims that the diplomats and their dependents were in danger of having their immunity stripped and that their personal safety was at risk. Imagine a country that remains a safe haven for terrorists talking about the personal safety of its diplomats in India. Well, all in-person services in consulates in Chandigarh, Mumbai and Bengaluru have also been paused, affecting the consular and visa services. There, the Ministry of External Affairs has hit back at Canada over its statement about risk to its diplomats and their family members in India. India says that seeking parity in diplomatic presence has been because of continued Canadian interference in India's internal affairs. India-Canada relations have worsened in the last 1 month since Justin Trudeau, the Prime Minister of Canada, accused India of having links in terrorist Hardeep Singh Nijjar's killing earlier this year.
As of now, I can confirm that India has formally conveyed its plan to unilaterally remove diplomatic immunities for all but 21 Canadian diplomats and dependents in Delhi by tomorrow, October 20th. This means 41 Canadian diplomats and their 42 dependents were in danger of having immunity stripped on an arbitrary date, and this would put their personal safety at risk. The safety of Canadians and of our diplomats is always my top concern. Given the implications of India's actions on the safety of our diplomats, we have facilitated their safe departure from India. This means that our diplomats and their families have now left.
So can you clarify, have you shown them the evidence you're basing your claim on, and have you walked them through that case and shown them how Canada has reached this conclusion?
We've had numerous conversations with India before the Prime Minister went in front of the House and made his declaration. This was not a surprise to the government of India.
A surprise, but the evidence, did you show them the evidence?
Through these different conversations, the Indian officials were made aware of the credible allegations.
Well, Melanie Joly's very woolly answers to those questions aside, I want to bring in India Today's Geeta Mohan for more on this. Geeta, a month since Justin Trudeau triggered that entire diplomatic crisis between India and Canada, doesn't look like it's cooled down. It's only escalated. That deadline extended just a little bit, but 41 diplomats, from the Canadian consulates and High Commission out of the country. Do we have parity now, as India has been seeking?
Parity 21 in Canada and 21 here in New Delhi, in India. And the consulates shut will surely impact visa services. A lot of Indians do go to Canada, but that's not the point over here. There have been internal conversations, private conversations that Canada was involved in to ensure that they are exempt from this decision by India. But India stuck its ground. Internal matters that Canada was interfering in is the reason why they sought parity. And while the Canadian Foreign Minister said that there is a violation over here, the Indian government has put out a statement saying that they reject all such allegations against India, that India has done it under all terms and conditions of the Vienna Convention on Diplomatic Relations, and the host country has a right to seek parity.
Okay, parity there. Canadian interference in internal affairs, still India's stand. We'll have to see where things go next. Things are not pretty at this point between India and Canada. Geeta, thanks very much for that input. That's a wrap on 5 Live. Thanks for watching. I'll see you at the same time next week. Up next is 6 p.m. Prime with Akshita Nandagopal. Trinamool MP Mahua Maitra is hit out at businessman Darshan Hiranandani's letter. Calls it a joke. Is she caught in an ugly corporate proxy war, or is there something else that doesn't meet the eye? Akshita decodes the entire fracas next.
You are watching India Today. Powered by Finest, Be Sustainable Change, a BNP Group company.
मिस्टर निंदाली उन्होंने ये आरोप लगाया, और ये आरोप कितना सच है कितना झूठ है वो तो इंक्वायरी से पता चलेगा, लेकिन ये सामने आ रहा है कि एक बिजनेस ग्रुप को, अदानी ग्रुप को टारगेट किया गया, क्योंकि अदानी ग्रुप गुजरात से है, मोदी जी भी गुजराती है, इसलिए टारगेट किया गया। 60 में से 51 क्वेश्चन, यानी लगभग 90% क्वेश्चन अदानी ग्रुप के ऊपर पूछा गया मोहम्मद द्वारा, और उसका लॉगिन आईडी निंदाली को दिया गया था। उन्होंने ही खुद से घुसकर वो क्वेश्चन किया। पूरी चीज सामने आ चुकी है, इसकी इंक्वायरी होनी चाहिए और मोहम्मद पर कार्रवाई भी होनी चाहिए। इसे प्रिविलेज ऑफ ब्रीच
serious allegation. Why चलছে কি হাত ধরে shameful that she is elected from Bengal. We all are Bengali. We all are Bengali people. And seriously condemn this type of unethical practices by the TMC.
Defaming the PM.
She always loudly said against Honorable PM on the floor of the Parliament.
লোকসভার এথিক্স কমিটি যাকে দেখেছে, লোকসভার এথিক্স কমিটি যাকে দেখেছে,
লোকসভার ethics committee should take appropriate action as early as possible.
Make your media plan smarter with India Today Live TV on your connected devices. Amplify your brand with 100 million smart internet viewers. To advertise, mail us at sales@aajtak.com. are watching India Today, powered by Finest, Be Sustainable Change, a BNP Group company.
It's always been about accepting yourself. Embrace your true, authentic self and go out there and kill it.
I think it's not about setting unrealistic beauty standards anymore.
Every single person is unique, and it's time we embrace our own uniqueness. You have to wake up every day and kind of just, like I said, love yourself.
The idea of beauty means different things to different people. And in this age of body positivity, these stars too revealed what beauty means to them.
So I'm a little silly, I'm a little clumsy. I think I'm a mix of all of that, which is why I feel For Every You truly resonates with me and also speaks to me, because I am many, many versions of myself.
Everything has beauty, but not everyone can see it, and it's their loss, honestly.
Recently, at the launch of Tida, we even witnessed technology marry beauty. In a one-of-its-kind initiative, you do not have to run through various products to create the look that you want. You simply click on the look that suits you and it tells you exactly which product has been used. And this, for most of us, makes life much easier. In this digital age, technology is not just a tool. It's a transformative force that empowers everyone to feel confident and express their beauty like never before.
The new beauty shopping experience.
In Mumbai, Chaiti Narula for Lifestyle Bureau India Today.
The battleground is heating up and our warriors are in top form. With the World Cup in sight, India is ready as we build up to India's best coverage. Join us to cheer for the men in blue. India Mange Ek Aur World Cup, the battle of champions.
In politics, everyone has an opinion, but I have the data. Whose stock is rising? Whose graph is falling? Track India's political stock exchange. Unmatched, unmissable data analytics. The only show on News TV where numbers do the talking. India's most credible poll tracker. The political stock exchange. With Rahul Kamal, only on India Today.
You are watching India Today, powered by Finest, Be Sustainable Change, a BNP Group company.
Co-powered by Blender's Pride Glassware, My Life, My Pride. The bold look of Kohler. Titan Eye Plus, expert who cares. Dulux Velvet Touch feels like home.
Mahua in midst of corporate crossfire. TMC MP faces ethics panel probe. Businessman Darshan Hiranandani makes big claim. Did Mahua share her parliamentary login? Is this 2023's biggest political scandal? Our top focus on 6 p.m. Prime.
Good evening. You're watching 6 p.m. Prime here on India Today. I'm Akshata Nandagopal, and this evening we're getting you the latest updates of the controversy plaguing TMC MP Mahua Moitra.